So the goal of our session today in CAFOs 2 is to dive deeper into the administrative and legal aspects of CAFOs, and particularly to learn lessons from North Carolina. And so we've got three distinguished panelists who have been very busy today talking in other sessions about the situation in North Carolina. And so the goal today, and I'll introduce myself, I'm Chris Heaney. I've been working with the three panelists for some time. I grew up in North Carolina, in Durham, North Carolina, and I did all my research training and academic training at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill at the School of Public Health, and have been a part of a lot of the work on the CAFOs issues. And now I'm here in Baltimore. I've been at Johns Hopkins since 2011. I'm at the School of Public Health, and I'm faculty there. And full disclosure, I still do a lot of work with Devon and Naeema on these citizen concerns related to hog CAFOs and poultry CAFOs in North Carolina. The idea of the format is we'll go through each of the panelists' experiences, their story, and let's try to maybe make it focused to as it brought you into the legal avenue as a part of the solution. And by way of that, speak about maybe your personal experiences and also overlap with research and how research is fed into legal strategies. And then after we go through each of your perspectives on that and seeing the legal strategies as a solution, we'll talk about two legal frameworks that have been activated around hog CAFOs in North Carolina. One is an administrative complaint under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, tying that to the Environmental Justice Executive Order 12898 from Bill Clinton. And the other are the nuisance lawsuits. So maybe we could sort of transition to those areas. Does that sound good?
Elsie, you can go down the line.
My name is Elsie, and I am from North Carolina. I live in Duplin County. And Duplin County.
Can you all hear her? Tell you that.
Sure.
Okay. My name is Elsie Herring, and I'm from Duplin County. That we consider hog heaven. That's the nickname for it because we have 2.2 million pigs in Duplin County. And I began doing this work when a hog operation came into my community and set up shop on my family's land. And I wrote letters, I started at the local level of government up to the federal level, trying to get their attention to the situation that we were dealing with because the animal waste was blowing over onto my family's land, on our houses, our cars, our person if we were outside. We become prisoners in our own homes. And none of the agencies seemed to care that we were dealing with this situation because at the time when I started speaking out, it was almost like it was a lone wolf. So they didn't want to give any attention to it at all. But because I kept complaining, and I was later introduced to Naeema and Devon, and they kept bringing in other people to get involved so we could lift up other voices to be heard about this issue because I wasn't the only person being impacted. These facilities are predominantly located in communities, people of color, low income, Latin, and Latino and Native Americans. So this was not just an accident. This was by design that they put these facilities in our communities because we have no money and we don't have a voice. So they have least resistance. So they came into our communities and they set up shop and they become the king of polluters. They started polluting our air, our water, and they made our lives unbearable. We became prisoners. So I just, along with the other people, kept complaining about the issues that we were having to deal with, about all the outgrowths that come from that. You know, we had to deal with flies, mosquitoes, buzzards, mice, snakes. You know, we got headaches. We felt like we wanted to throw up when we went outside, because you have to go outside sometime. But going outside to smell the waste is the only way you can smell it, because it will come into your house anyway. So we don't close out, we didn't open our doors, we don't open our windows, we don't have cookouts, we don't have people over anymore. We're not able to hang our clothes on the line anymore. We couldn't go outside and sit under the tree. We had to stop using our shallow wells, and by doing all those things, that was an added expense on us, and we're already, you know, living on fixed incomes. You know, we're not rich, but these were added burdens that we had to pay for. And to make the air bearable inside our homes, we had to buy air fresheners, incense, things of that nature, and that was still another further expense that was placed upon us. So we did all the things that we could do, and the last resort was for us to have legal litigation. And that's when the nuisance lawsuits came in.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm Naeema Muhammad. I am co-director, community organizer for the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. And we're a statewide organization that works with communities throughout North Carolina that's faced with environmental hazards, either already cited or pre-citing on ways to protect themselves and to try to change the conditions that exist in their communities that's preventing them from enjoying their lives. I first got involved in this work in 1999 after Hurricane Floyd broke a 500-year floodplain in eastern North Carolina. And in North Carolina, we have about 10 million pigs. And when the flood waters came, it flushed all those pigs out of those hog houses. And then they have a lagoon, which is nothing but a hole they dug in the ground that housed the urine and feces from these animals. And that's sitting out in the environment. And so the water's flushed all that waste out of those lagoons, and it's running all through the waterways in North Carolina. And, you know, so that was an environmental hazard that we already knew was gonna have health consequences from people that was wading through those waters trying to get to safety. And eastern North Carolina is a very poor part of the state, and the infrastructure in eastern North Carolina, throughout the entire eastern North Carolina, is very, very weak. So we don't have the proper infrastructure for handling all the stuff they keep dumping into eastern North Carolina. It's like anything white people don't want in their backyards, you can come find it in eastern North Carolina. We don't have the infrastructure to get people out of harm's way. You know, we have mostly volunteer fire departments. So you don't have no paid city-owned or state-owned fire department. These are volunteers that work other jobs that might have a radio, they hear something, they come out and respond. But that's, you know, those are weak infrastructures. And so to keep dumping on people who you can't get out of harm's way is just really unthinkable that you would continue to do this. So the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, as we began to talk about environmental problems, we were noticing that you didn't hear Black communities talking about environment. It was not on our radar screen. In 1999, when I first began, that was not on the radar screen of most Black communities. And so the first thing we recognized was, well, if people don't know nothing about it, no wonder they not saying anything. So what do we do about it? So we designed different brochures with health information, environmental, you know, like what do we mean by environmental justice? What is environmental justice? What is environmental racism? What is procedural inequity? You know, what does all of this have to do with what's going on in your community. So we designed brochures that became talking points. And as the organizer for the network, it was my task to take this information and follow the problem. And the way we were able to follow the problem was Dr. Steve Wing from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Him and one of his students went to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, the regulatory agency for the state of North Carolina, and they started pulling permits for what, like, if we saying pigs is the problem, how do we know that? And they started, well, let's see how many permits been issued for contract growers. And they started pulling permits for wherever a hog operation was permitted. And they had a map of North Carolina and some red pins. So they would pull the permit and put a red pin on the map for where that permit was located. And by the time they finished pulling all those permits and you looked at that map, eastern North Carolina was covered with red dots. And that's how we found out that out of the 10 million pigs in North Carolina, most of them were in eastern North Carolina. And they were concentrated really largely in the southeastern part of the state. And, and I said earlier to another group, the top 10 hog producing counties in the country is in eastern North Carolina. And North Carolina is number 2 to hog production. Iowa is number 1, but North Carolina has the most concentrated amount of pigs than any place else in the country. Duplin County, where Elsie and Devon is from, has been deemed the hog capital of the world. They have 2.2 million pigs, equating to about 45 pigs per person. And their next door neighbor, Sampson County, has 2 million pigs, equating to about 32 pigs per person. So side by side counties, you got 77 animals per person. Then they have these dead boxes that sit out at the state right of ways, where whenever these animals die because of the way they're grown and or get sickness in them, then they're taken to what's called a dead box that look like those big dumpsters that's used for our trash. When our trash cans fill up, you can take it to the dumpster. Well, that's what these dead boxes look like, one of those dumpsters, but it's filled up with number of dead chickens and turkeys and pigs. And then there's a rendering plant not far away from Duplin. It's part of Duplin County, in Duplin County, not far from where Devon lives. And it's called the rendering plant, where they take these dead animals and they render them and they make feed out of them. They grind them up, they make feed and give it back to the animals. So, and we eating that stuff, but anyway, so part of my role as an organizer was to help get people informed. How do we get people informed? Why are people quiet? Well, they quiet because they don't know. How do we get them up? You inform people. You arm them with information they need to speak on their own behalf. Elsie don't need me telling her story. She has a voice. She can tell her own story. Same thing with Devon. They don't need me telling their story. They can speak for themselves. And, so as an organizer, I'm not trying to speak for people. I want to give them the knowledge and the tools they need to be able to speak for themselves so they can tell their own story. That's more powerful than anything I could ever say, because people, nobody can tell your story better than you. And anyway, so we had this project called Community Health and Environmental Reawakening. That's what we use to go around and get communities informed about what we mean by environmental justice. What is environmental justice? And, why do we talk about it? What does that have to do with your community? And so we took the maps that we had and we used them as visual aid and showed, and we built a room like this and meeting with the community and we said, okay, put the map up, do you see your house? And then people go in the shop because they was like, yeah, that's my house right through there, but you can hardly see it because you got all this stuff around it. A lot of times people didn't realize they were living around that much filth and harm, and so to see it on a map was just our awakening. I guess that's what you want to say, how you say it. But it woke people up, and it began people start talking, because one of the other things that I noticed that people were not talking to each other, you know. Well, if I smell it and you right next door to me, shouldn't I assume you smell it and ask you? And we begin a conversation. So how do you get neighbors talking to each other? And then one I know I've heard people say, well, they don't come out to the meeting no matter what you say. I ain't telling them nothing. No, that's not the attitude that we're gonna have. I said because we're gonna tell it everywhere we go. We're gonna tell it. And what got you up might not get me up, but what got me up didn't get you up. So how do we get each other up? We keep telling it until I tell you that thing that strike you that you can't resist no more. So we just keep telling it. Just keep talking to each other. Be concerned for your neighbor. I think I know it's a saying they always say, I am my brother's keeper. Well, we certainly are, whether we want to be or not. We really are. But, we have to look out for each other because if we don't, ain't nobody else gonna do it. Nobody else is gonna do it. So we have to take care of each other. But anyway, as I stated, I think I told y'all this right at the start, I have more fun than anybody doing the work that I do. I truly enjoy working with communities, and I love it when you get people informed and you see them change their mind. You see them go from, I can't do nothing about that because that's their property, or I can't do nothing about that because they too powerful, or and then you see them get up and say, well, no, you don't have a right to spray animal waste on me. I don't care if you do own that property. And you lying when you say it does not leave your property line. I'm the evidence that it does. My car is the evidence. My house is the evidence. And Chris and them went even so far as to, because this was a line in North Carolina that the industry was feeding to our elected officials and to the DENR, the Department of Environmental Quality. They were telling them that the waste didn't leave the property line that it was generated on. Well, any idiot knows that if you put water in the air and the wind get on it, you might as well say goodbye, cause it's gone, But they was buying into this stuff, and so they did this study called Pig 2 Back, and with the Pig 2 Back, they swabbed people's homes using these long Q-tips that you use for nasal swabs, and they swabbed the outsides of people's homes, the outer walls, underneath air conditioning units, under where you got creases and crevices, swipe in those places. They went inside and they swiped inside people's homes, refrigerator tops, microwave tops, tabletops, furniture, like couches, children's toys. And can we tell you that out of all that swabbing, they proved what people were saying is that the waste was in people's homes, it was on that outer wall. But so if it doesn't leave your property line, how the hell it get over here?
Yeah.
Why is it in my house? I'm not a grower. I don't have no pigs and stuff. So, but anyway, it's just been a lot going on. Sometimes I be driving my car, I said, I think, and y'all have to excuse my French, but I can't resist this one. I be driving my car sometimes, I think every damn body in North Carolina lost their mind. And and I just, cause people, we be getting all kinds of phone calls from communities all across the state with one thing after another. Got one community call because they wanted to put a landfill in after the state and said no new landfills. The landfill companies got slick, started calling them expansions. Well, the communities were not crazy. They know an expansion from new. And so we just had to give them the Solid Waste Act law in writing so they could read it for themselves, understand what it means. So you can use this to protect your community. And that's what we did, and that's what they were able to do. And then you got Duke Energy putting coal ash ponds everywhere. Then we had the Dan River spilled about 30-some thousand gallons of coal ash into the river, the Dan River. And and then they got these ponds, these coal ash ponds everywhere where they want to keep houses, coal ash, and it's in poor communities, so people are being exposed that way. You got people wanting to take human waste and make fertilizer out of it. Did y'all ever hear about that? And so they say it's called sewage sludge, and the technical name is biosolids. That's a cute name, okay? But the real name is sewage sludge, and they calling it fertilizer. And they truck it out to farmers. They give it to them as free fertilizer to put on their crops. And the farmers get mad if you say something because then you taking away mine, and now I got to pay for fertilizer. I got to pay for manpower to just put the fertilizer down. Whereas the companies bring it out, they give them the fertilizer, the sludge, they spread it as fertilizer, and they do it for them, and so it don't cost them anything. And but it's just I could go on and on and on, but I'm not gonna do that because Devon still needs to talk, and we got another round of stuff to talk about, so I'm gonna be quiet.
Thank you, Naeema.
Okay, I'm Devon Hall. I'm co-founder of the Rural Empowerment Association for Community Health, known to most people as REACH, and we're located in Duke County, North Carolina. And as Elsie stated, to most people, that we talk to, they recognize Duke County being, hog capital of the world. Just want to point out a few things. One of the reasons why REACH was formed in the very beginning. And 1999, when Hurricane Floyd hit, the East Coast, I worked for the Department of Transportation, bridge maintenance. And when a major storm hits, the term first responders is normally not the policemen and the fire department, the state workers, because we got to get those roads open and keep them open so that the emergency vehicles can get through. So with reasons like that, the lack of resources in Duke and surrounding counties, for whatever people, the concerns was, inadequate housing because of the flooding, and other type of resources, even with FEMA, the questions people have with things like FEMA. So that was one of the reasons why we formed REACH. It was only until 2004 that I met Naeema and Dr. Steve Wing, and they was in our area, and was talking to us about our research project, CHILL. And from that, that really, it just sparked my interest. I wanted to know more. I wanted to be involved the best I could. And in getting involved with that first research study, myself as being a community organizer, and knowing how bad it smelled and how bad the issues was in just the community that I live in Duke County, you didn't hear people from other communities talking much about the odor and the things that they were dealing with. But being an organizer for that particular project, I began to hear similar stories everywhere I went throughout Duke County. In 2005, we received a small grant from US EPA to do a listening project, educational type project. We call it DHAP, Duke Environmental Awareness Project. And it didn't take me long to realize that research would be a powerful tool, because when we would go talk to our policymakers, it was like a joke to them, and it's amazing how people, for some reason, don't want to believe in the science. And I remember approaching our state representative one time, and when he said to me, I don't believe in science, I don't trust the research. And I simply asked him, I said, you take any type of meds? And of course he said, yeah, you know. I said, well, then you had to believe in the research, somebody's research. In 2008, Reach was involved in a project called SEEP that was funded by another group, or actually a union. And at the same time, we was involved in a children's health study in local schools, nearby schools, Duplin and Sampson County. And I'll never forget one morning, went to the nearest town, let's see, from the office at that point, about 7 miles away, and on my way back home, about 8:15 in the morning, I documented a contract Royal Spring hog waste. And within the past about 4 days, we've got a tremendous amount of rain. And it was still raining early that morning. So I called in that a violation, anonymous. Didn't give my name. Didn't think to block my number.
Call in.
And but I called in that violation to the Division of Water Resources or Air Quality. And when I got home, I called them back. I said, "You didn't give me a reference number, so I can call back later to check the status of this complaint." And they still wouldn't give me a reference number. And again, I'm telling them, I said, "Look, this is an anonymous call." I guess about 2:30 that afternoon, I received a phone call. I use a Bluetooth even back then. And you know how we are most time, you get a phone call, you don't recognize the number, you don't answer. But this particular day, I answered the call, and the person on the other end said to me, "Who is this?" And I simply responded, "Well, you called my number, who are you trying to reach?" And we went back and forth for a while there. And finally he said to me, "Well, someone with this number called and reported me this morning." And of course, when he said that, I said, "Oh yeah, I'll tell you who I am now." And I began to tell him who I was and the name of the organization, that I work with. And I invited him to come and sit and talk with us. Of course, he never did. But I did call DEQ back later that day, and I informed them that they dropped the ball because, again, they wasn't supposed to give out my number. They apologized. You can imagine how far that got. From there, we just realized that it just wasn't enough. Research. I realized more than ever that research was a powerful tool, and we began to work with Steve Wing even more on research, Dr. Heaney on research projects, and I can't tell you the number of projects that we've done since 2004. There's been so many, and the involvement that Reach and the community has been in those research projects. Do I have all the answers? No, but I do believe that the research and the data that we was obtaining could hopefully at some point be used, for policy change. And in 2014, Reach, along with the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network and the Water Keeps Alliance, filed a Title VI complaint against DEQ. And when we talk about that now, and even with the Title VI settlement, we talk about it as if it was a joke. Because as much as you want to trust your policymakers, as much as you want to trust your state regulatory agencies, even when they put something, in writing,
They can't.
We recognize that it can't be trusted. So that takes me to where Reach is now. And even, I guess latter 2014, when we began to do more research, work closely with Dr. Heaney, recognizing that with some of the instruments and technologies that we had at our disposal, that just developing a rapid response team within the community. I mean, really, doing as much we could in the lens of research and citizen science, and not just doing that just for the sake of having the data, but get that information back to the community so they can understand even more what we've been exposed to. Because as Naeema stated, when you begin to talk to people in the communities about hydrogen sulfide, E. coli, and how nitrate levels, sometimes it don't register. But when you begin to tell people that you got pig two-back, on their refrigerator.
And just explain what pig two-back is. You know the term, but what does that mean?
But that's a bacteria that we've learned that, which is a DNA marker. It's a marker, and that is only found or generated in the gut of a pig. And I like saying it in a cleaner way. It's hog waste. But again, when you begin to explain to people that you've got traces of hog waste on your refrigerator. Now, if you just say, well, it's on the doorknob, coming into the house, it's one thing. But on your refrigerator, on the handle, on the top of your microwave, see, that really begin to get people's attention. Because now you're thinking about, hey, what am I eating here? Did I wash my hands enough, or should I have an extra bottle of sanitizer? So again, when you begin to use certain terms, and we've had to learn these things, over the years, that I'm no scientist by no means, but when the researchers come to work with us and partner with us, the one thing that we try to make it, we try to make it as simple as we can to the people that live in the impacted communities. Because again, when you say, there's traces of hog waste inside your house, it wakes people up. That's still not enough. When we look at the last election, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but I do, because I'm thinking locally. What the turnout was in the county that I live in. That makes me know that we got to do more. So when your policymakers that you elected, year and year, in the past, if they're not representing us the way we feel they should, it's not enough just for us to say to them, if you don't represent me properly, we're going to vote you out. I would like to think that we should be telling them, we're going to vote you out and we're going to run against you. Not, and with that being said, there's a lot of people always come to me and say, Devon, why don't you run? Why don't you run? And what we want to do is groom someone else. Give people or get people, the tools that they need so they'll feel comfortable, going to county commission meeting, town board meeting, that don't have to be me. Because by nature, I'm a shy person. But at the same time, if we can get people, that live in the impacted communities, the tools so they'll feel comfortable, then yeah, hopefully one day that they will be the policymakers. And the policies that they make will, and the decisions they make will better reflect what the people in the community feels and needs.
Well, one thing I'd like to put out there, and that might benefit the audience, is with the research you mentioned that Steve Wing had done, you mentioned the CHEO project. That was about air pollutants, things you can measure in the air that would reflect odors from the hog waste management systems, the lagoons and the spray fields. And the reaction when that research, which is very, very elegant, it has cause and effect because of the study designs that Steve thought about, doing things over time, repeated measures that these pollution events are transient, and he could figure out that when the pollution events came and the residents didn't know what the hydrogen sulfide levels were on this trailer that was measuring it, what they were recording in their diaries about odor and symptoms all ended up lining up with the pollutants, that they're not it's not clear that they're always there every time an odor episode happens and that kind of thing. So it's a really elegant causal thing that says the malodor is coming from the hog CAFOs. It's not a just general thing. And these are all things that Steve developed testimony to the Raleigh legislators, and then the community gave testimony afterwards. And what was the reaction? What was the response to some of the research in trying to have the research have a policy change? And there was something on the table. It was to end lagoons and spray fields.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
But
But what did they say about the odor studies?
Oh, they said that the people they were lying. They said they were lying. And when they said they smelled the stuff, that they were lying.
Always stay.
And they said they didn't smell stink, they smelled money.
They said the smell of money to us.
Smell of money to them.
And they said, if the facilities didn't stink, we wouldn't be here in
Yeah.
this room.
That's right.
They said, where are the body bags? They said, where's the death of the more
Yeah.
harsh outcome, right?
The first time we did a report back on that jail study in Duplin County to our county commissioners. After we finished the presentation, one of the county commissioners, stood up and asked, "Has anyone died and an autopsy been performed to prove that they died from hiding themselves out of exposure?"
Yeah. And in the face of that, with really important science that Steve and you all were a part of, it's sort of a question. What led you to reach the conclusion that as a part of this movement with residents and community groups, legal strategies need to be a part of the toolkit? And where did you fit in arriving at this decision, and maybe then jump to where those legal strategies are now, Title VI and the nuisance lawsuit?
Well, it first came about because there was this lawyer that came in from Kansas, had contacted Steve, and was talking about the problem. He had seen Steve's work, and so he was talking about this idea of nuisance lawsuits, and so he wanted to come to North Carolina to have a talk. And so it was two of them that came. It was Charlie Spillman and Rich Middleton. And they came to North Carolina and they talked about a nuisance lawsuit. What is a nuisance lawsuit? Why would you file a nuisance lawsuit? And what could be some possibilities from taking that action? And then they shared that they had filed some nuisance lawsuits against the pork industry in, I think it was Missouri and Kansas, and they had won those cases, and the people got restitution from all the nuances that they had suffered. And so when we started talking about all the stuff going on in North Carolina, well, it would make sense to file these cases in North Carolina. So then we knew that, but we were in the room. So now how do you convince the people? How do you not just convince them? How do you help them get the courage and the strength to file against this industry that's been so violent in the past, that's been like the mafia in North Carolina? So how do you get people to say, okay, I'll sign up? But it took a lot of work and a lot of meetings and a lot of talking and a lot of explaining and a lot of, just helping people to understand, well, if we don't do it now, when? And if not, if we don't, what chances do we have? And nothing is gonna change if we keep not doing anything. And then to even understand that while we talking about going after the nuisance lawsuit where you get monetary value, that will be nothing if we don't keep fighting for systemic change. That we've got to continue to organize, we've got to continue to fight to change the conditions in our community. Get rid of these lagoons and spray fields. Stop dumping your waste in our communities. And just, let's clean this crap up and do different. But in the meantime, while they won't change, you make them pay. And so, I guess we don't have to say a whole lot. It's not that hard when you tell people they can get some money, you know, and that's the piece that still disturbs me, you know. But what can I say? You know, after people have suffered so long, that's the least they can get. But, you know, we've got to keep fighting for change. Because when you get the money that's gone and the crap ain't changed, you back in the same place. And so understanding that, you know, and so the greater piece is to fight for change. But anyway, so they did the law, so we were able to get 500 citizens from Eastern North Carolina to sign up for this nuisance lawsuit. And it took about 4 years of battling with the courts before the federal courts accepted those cases and said they'd bring them to trial. And so the first case went to trial in April of last year. And April of last year, right? Not this year.
16.
Yeah, April 2016. April 2019.
19.
It's 2018. April of 2018.
Charlie Richard filed them originally.
Yeah, but they didn't start
but
being
Mona
heard.
Lisa and
18.
yeah, no, 17, Mona Lisa and
It was in 18, but I was in Hawaii when that first came through. But let me say this, if I may.
I wanted to clarify something. The nuisance lawsuits came because that was our last recourse.
That's what I was gonna go to.
We had no recourse after that because the industry not only polluted our lives, but they threatened our lives.
Yes.
The hog farmer's son came into my mother's house and he opened the screen door and the storm door and he grabbed onto her chair that she was sitting in and he shook her around. And he cursed at her until he could do anything that he wanted to me and get away with it. And my mother was 98 years old at the time. I've got a letter from a lawyer that represented the industry and the county, the Devon County that Devon and I live in. And that letter told me that if I continued my groundless complaints to DINA, which is now DEQ, that I could be made to pay the hog farmer money that he was losing, or I could be made to serve time in jail. That was just to intimidate us. He came over twice with a gun. The hog farmer himself came over with a stick threatening to hit me with it. When I would be driving on my side of the road, the hog farmer's son on his side, he would cross over in front of my lane and I would have to come to a complete stop until he got back over on his side. So with this harassment coming on, you know, they're showing this ugly face with this harassment, the industry protecting them, justifying them to do this kind of behavior. That told you that you couldn't stop this fight. At least I know I couldn't. Plus, I was in this fight from the beginning because of my family land had already been compromised. They went into the registry of deeds office and manipulated the will, the deeds, and the map. So being that was our last recourse, I began organizing with Devon, with Reach, and then later and concurrently with Naeema in the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. And with the resources that they brought in, I became a community organizer. And we went out into the communities, and Naeema and Devon as well, and we educated people. We had over 4,000 people sign up for the nuisance lawsuits. Only 500 was filed. Now, when our lawyers and the pork industry lawyers went face to face to determine if these cases would be able to make it to trial, well, the judge ruled in our favor, the plaintiffs. I'm one of the plaintiffs in the nuisance lawsuits.
And explain where that judge was. Was that a state judge?
Yeah,
Was it in Raleigh?
In Raleigh.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where
That was a federal judge in Raleigh.
Yeah, in Raleigh. And that's where the cases are being heard now in the Supreme Court in Raleigh. 5 cases have been tried already. But when these cases were being argued whether they would move forward or not, when we won out that they would be allowed to be heard in court, the industry came up with these ideas that they needed to stop these cases at all costs. So they introduced this bill, House Bill 467, which the main intent in that bill was for those cases that had been filed to be thrown out. They failed. Well, what law did do is limit the amount of financial compensation that we could get. And less than a year later, the Senate introduced a bill, SB 711, which took away that right from us, which meant we could get nothing. Because in order to get financial compensation, you would have to file the lawsuit with DEQ. They would have to come out and investigate within a year. They cut the funding for the inspectors to come out. So that told you right away that they were not going to get to your complaint within that year. And at that time, you have to start this process all over again, which is what will happen if we don't get those laws off the books, which we need to get them off the books because they're unconstitutional. You cannot deny us our due course in court, but that's what they're doing. The Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees people the right to liberty, life, and property. But these bills are denying us those rights. So if we get financial compensation and these CAFOs still exist as they are now, then what good is that money going to do us? In the year 1997, a moratorium was put in place. That was the first victory that we had because they could not build another CAFO operation without comprehensive disposal system. Industry spent millions of dollars to have systems identified, superior technology systems that they could put in place, that they would not have to use the spray fill and lagoon system. The industry agreed in 2000 with the state to phase them out. They agreed that they were outdated, but they did not phase out the spray fill and lagoon system. What they did instead, they're converting the animal waste now into electricity, biogas, and using this digester system. So that money they spent to create this digester system, why didn't they use that money to phase out the spray fill lagoon system, implement the superior technology as they agreed to in 2000? They chose not to do that because they saw an opportunity where they could make more money by converting the waste and selling it to customers.
Which Google is now buying into
Exactly.
and supporting
Yes.
through some of the technology for biogas that's being developed at Duke
Right.
University.
Yeah.
And the other thing about this hog waste is prior to it becoming a moneymaker, potential moneymaker, the only thing the contract growers that sign up to do business with Smithfield, who was the owner of these pigs, the only thing that belonged to them was the waste.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else belonged to Smithfield. The animals, the houses, the trucks, the feed, the little houses in London, where they feed the animals, the trucks that transport them, all that stuff. They had the world's largest slaughterhouse in eastern North Carolina, employing about 5,500 workers, slaughtering about 39,000 pigs per day. And but now that they can make money off this waste, now all of a sudden it belongs to them. Okay.
And out of that, by them converting this waste to energy, that means there's an increase in gases that's being released into the environment, because we already have gases being released, ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, the other CO2, all these are already being released, so now you have more. Then there's an increase in traffic, because you have these tanker trucks transporting this waste. We already have the trucks coming into our communities, bringing in the pigs, taking the pigs out, the feed, and the dead trucks. So that's another increase in traffic in our communities, like we need more traffic. So where is the common ground that we can come to with the industry to listen to us, to bring us to the table? Because we're never at the table when they make these decisions. When they decided to do Bill HB 467, we weren't there. When they decided on SB 711, we weren't at the table. So they're always making decisions about how our lives are supposed to be lived, but they're never getting any feedback from what we want. We can tell them, we all have mouths, we could tell them what we want in our communities and what we don't want, but we don't have a say-so.
And
So-
can I just add that just so everyone knows, the nuisance suits that have been tried so far, there's been five correctly that have been tried, and they've all been won by the neighbors. The plaintiffs have won them all. And what I have noticed is that it appears the industry at each step of the progression of nuisance cases is trying to block them from going forward.
Exactly, we're still trying.
And the question is, has the House bill and the Senate bill, it's limited, that's another extension of their efforts to stop an impact, any negative impact for them related to the citizens'
Right,
legal strategies as being, a resident in the United States.
right.
And my question is, the Senate bill, is it completely eliminating any jury-related decisions or awards, or is it just capping them
No.
for the current cases, or is it only for future cases?
467 was capping, SB 711 is saying people they can't sue.
Can't say.
No further. No new
Any
cases.
new cases, but the existing 500
The existing
individuals
cases
They're gonna move
can
forward.
proceed.
still moving
Right.
forward.
They're moving forward.
It was House Bill 467 that the state representative for Duplin County, put forth the House Bill 467. He wrote in there, and we want it to be retroactive. Well, to have the bill retroactive would have meant we want to loop in these 500 cases so they can't go forward after the courts have said they have the right to go forward. So they're gonna go through the policymakers to try to get what they want. Let's go get y'all to write this bill and shut them down. Well, the people showed up and spoke on their own behalf before the legislators. Some of them listened and said, you know what, this is unconstitutional. I don't wanna have nothing to do with that. I'm not signing no bill with that retroactive statement in there. But now I'm not gonna sign a bill, period, cause all of it is unconstitutional. But, so what they did, they took out the retroactive statement and signed the bill into law. That, and signed the bill saying, if they file, they can only get property damage.
Yeah, amendment was-
None of all the other stuff.
Yeah, an amendment was added to the HB 467, which exempt those 500 cases. So that's why they're moving through the court system now. And of the 5 cases that have been tried, we won all 5 of those cases to the tune of $500 million. But the thing is, this is just another way to chip away at the United States Constitution. Because the Constitution was put in place for a reason, to have check and balances in this civilized society.
And right to enjoyment of
Your
property.
because that's the reason.
And life.
And life.
Those are the reasons that those lawsuits have been filed, because we're being denied the use of our property rights. And everybody should have the right to enjoy their home. I mean, that's your safe place, that's, your beginning and sometimes your end. But with these lawsuits, they wanna take that away from us. And it's not just the CAFO issue that the Constitution has been chipped away at. There's so many other different areas in our lives that we are going after the United States Constitution, especially under this current administration that we have in place. So if we don't stand up and fight, then they'll take away all of our rights. And in these communities where these facilities are located, I'm pretty sure that it's the property that is the ultimate goal. Because these people have been making money for decades. How much more money do you wanna make? They're gonna make more money off of the animal waste.
Can I ask if the industry, or as I'll say it, as you mentioned, if the representative from Duplin County, who may or may not have been acting as a proxy for industry, right, hadn't been successful,
He was a chicken farmer himself.
if they hadn't been successful in getting those bills passed,
They did
was
that.
the sense that the nuisance lawsuits were going to have an impact? That's a big number. I mean, maybe it is or maybe it isn't to an industry like Smithfield. How much was it? 500?
$560 million.
Was
But that
he
didn't-
got
Was there a
500
sense that,
cases?
as a strategy, that could have been something that could have changed the way that how CAFOs would have been managed and operated in North Carolina?
You got 500 cases, 26 groups, and your first 5 done won. And each person has been given $75,000 compensatory damages, 5 million punitive damages. Now the 5 million is up in arms because there's a law on the books of backwards North Carolina. There's a law on the book that says punitive damages cannot be more than $250,000 or 3 times the punitive amount. Yeah.
So
I mean, three times the compensatory amount, whichever is greater.
And each of these jurors, there's been 56 of them, right? They found that the industry is a bad neighbor.
Yeah.
These people don't live in these impacted communities.
Right.
So they listen to the evidence, they listen to people's taking the stand, telling their stories, and all these people telling the same stories. So you know all these people are not telling untruths. And there was more people than 500 that signed up, but only 500 got. The strongest 500 got filed.
And
If I may, one of the things that concerned me the most about those bills was the North Carolina General Assembly took it upon themselves to draft and pass bills to protect an industry that's owned by China.
When China now, yeah.
Some of it is owned by China.
WH Group, yeah. But it doesn't matter who owns them. They're
Right.
still polluting and holding us prisoners in our own homes. And in some instances, they're taking people's land. And there's something wrong with that. You know, there's something wrong with that. And then the people who are, these guys that introduced these bills, Jimmy Dixon, HB 467, he was a hog farmer and a chicken farmer. So that's self-interest.
And he received money from the pork industry for his campaigns to the tune of about, what, $15,000? $15,000.
And Brent Jackson, he introduced Bill SB 711. So our local officials are not even looking out for the people that put them in office.
No,
That
but
they're
they
supposed-
following the money.
Right, they're supposed to be representing the people, not the industry.
so let me ask, Title VI was against the Division of Environmental Quality, which issues the permits
And
for
that's
these
a
hog CAFOs. Okay?
administrative complaint with no monetary
And
value.
the idea behind the administrative complaint was here you have a state entity receiving federal money.
Right.
That makes them eligible for you to file a Title VI complaint. Issuing permits every 4 years, 5 years, knowing that every time they issue a permit with the research that's shown a disproportionate adverse impact by Title VI protected groups, race, ethnicity, you're essentially reissuing the harm.
Right.
But I heard you mention that you felt, what is the outcome of Title VI? Has it led to anything?
Well, what it has done was brought more public attention to the problem, because believe it or not, that was a well-kept secret in North Carolina. And the Title VI and the nuisance cases bust that wide open. And so the nuisance cases was already making it public information. And then the Title VI came out, and then when EPA issued that 14-page letter of concern that we made public information, that elevated the issue even more. And now the real results in terms of the agency and the organizations that filed the complaint, which was in North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, REACH, and the Waterkeeper Alliance, we are really strategizing a response to DEQ. When we filed a complaint, they were called the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Now they call these agencies the Department of Environmental Quality. And we thought they had good intentions. We thought they had some integrity about them. We knew the old group didn't, so we knew that was hopeless. But when the new government came in, we thought we had a fighting chance of really getting something done in North Carolina.
And that's
And-
from
and-
new government, you mean the old governor,
Yeah, from
appoints
going
the-
from Macquarie to
Cooper, who's a
to the
Democrat
Cooper
governor.
administration. And we got rid of all of them pork-loving people in DEQ, when the administration changed. But I said, I should have said all of them, they didn't get rid of all of them. A couple of them stayed in place, you know. But the bottom line is that, to be honest about the complaint that was filed, even though we reached a settlement after 2 years of mediation, we reached an agreement. DEQ is not living up to their end of the bargain. And I don't mind telling y'all, you haven't heard the last of this, cause I get more pissed off every day.
So-
And I do intend on us doing something about it, that we're not gonna just take this land down. We're not gonna just quietly go on about our business and keep doing. No, you're gonna answer for the problems that you've created in our community.
So what are the grievances? Did they reissued the permits? Is the part
Yeah,
of the
they
story?
reissued their permits and
Against the complaint.
they didn't put no
Safeguards for people.
safeguards in place that would make it better for people. They were supposed to be putting the EJ tool in place. And we find out on a conference call with them, when we questioning them about the EJ tool, they want to change it from an EJ tool to a community mapping tool, which is totally different. And so we was like, well, why not an EJ tool? Because we want the EJ tool because we want to be able to shut down some of these permits that keep getting issued in the same communities. You know, people have to look at what's already there, and if it's too much, don't put nothing else there. Well, we can't do that because once a permit is issued at the local level, we have no basis for denying it. Well, you know what? So what the hell are we talking about then? You know? And I don't need to be on the phone with y'all because, and my understanding is that an EJ2 is gonna prevent y'all from issuing all these badass permits, period. If that's not what it's gonna do, what do we need it for? You know? And so I was like, well, I'm out of here. But they are not doing what they agreed to in this thing. And I think, number one, we've been talking about what do, we go public. Let the public know. Embarrass their behinds. Because they looking like the good guys right now. Like they've done some really good stuff by the people. And so we gonna have to go public, letting people know, no, they're not living up to the agreement. These are the things that they were supposed to do that they haven't done, and we're not gonna be quiet about
These
it
were things that were agreed on with the parties that were involved.
in the
But
mediation.
if you look at the 1964 Civil Rights Law, it clearly states corporations cannot take federal funds and discriminate against minorities. And that is a proven fact of what's happening. So why didn't they address the people? There was no consideration in the agreement that would put in any kind of protections for the people.
Yeah, state
And that
state
people-
institutions,
So
right,
why don't the
can't take
state
federal
people
funds.
do their job?
Yeah. Can I ask, is there, in this situation where there's been a mediation, you think you've reached an agreement, but then you discover they're not holding up the end of the bargain. What are the options for community groups? Are you able to refile? Are you thinking about refiling? Are you doing the nuisance cases as some
Well-
other parallel? Is it related so people can understand kind of
Right,
what
right.
all the tools
Well,
are?
no, we wouldn't refile. There's no need to refile under this current administration that we have. We barely skated through with the last administration. And so we definitely won't, it'd be useless now to file when you got somebody like Donald Trump at the rear.
I see.
And, you know, so ain't no need to go through that because you can rest assured they reverted back to their old ways of ignoring these Title VI complaints in the first place. And so we are truly looking at what can we do, you know, discussing it, you know, within our groups what can we do, what kind of response can we have that can send a message to DEQ that we not playing with them, you know? And, so, and we're talking about, some legal strategy. Are there any legal strategies that we can use that will benefit, We know that that like 711 and 467 is unconstitutional. We know that. So that can be challenged based on that. And, but whether or not we have a real kind of legal strategy that we can use against DEQ for not holding up their end of the bargain. We believe that we have a way, but we checking into that. And
So
until we know.
what you're talking about is the idea of a constitutional
Like we might
general
have
law?
we might have to go to the Office of Administrative Hearing.
Where is that? Within who?
That's within the state agency,
see.
that's in the state. They like the oversight committee for state agencies that don't function like they should, that don't do the right thing by people. Cause I know that under the workers' rights, my husband filed a case with them against the school for the deaf in Wilson, and that case was won, and workers got all this restitution because of some things that had been done to them, discriminatory things that had been done.
And that's why some point
So-
to get those laws off the books, HB 467, SB 711, because if you get those laws off the books, then when these lawsuits that are in court now are heard, that means the lawyers for the plaintiffs can continue to sue for financial compensation. But as long as those laws are on the books, there's nothing that we can do. Now, in the arguments that are being presented when you in doing these nuisance lawsuits, there is suggestion from the lawyers that this system has been proven to be antiquated. So phase them out. Now, will
The
that
lagoon and
happen?
Sprayfield
If that
system.
will, yeah, the lagoon and Sprayfield system. Now, if that is not accomplished from the nuisance lawsuits, then the only thing that I see that we could do is work to get those laws off the books and continue to sue them. The more you hit them in the pockets, then that to me is the only deterrent. I've always thought that's the only deterrent is to hit them in the pocketbooks. But we'll not be able to do that as long as those books stay on, those two laws stay on the books.
Yeah. Well, how about we?
I think
Devon,
there's
open it
another-
up to-
If I may, I think we do have one other thing that's working out in our favor. I'm a firm believer that even the industry recognizes now that they have to deal with Mother Nature. Because if you look at the occurrence of all these major storms that keep hitting our coastline, breaching these lagoons, flooding out these barns, I can understand why Smithfield has put in place a phase out or close out or buyout, if you like, of some of the farms that's in the floodplains. But when we look at the frequency of these storms and the area that's flooding now, I mean, we might want to have to go back and question what is now floodplain, because we're seeing floods in areas that we've never seen before. So, with that in mind, I think that's another thing that's going to draw the industry back to the table and begin to recognize that, you know what, if these lagoons keep breaching, we're going to have to do something different. It's not going to be enough to put a tarp over lagoon to capture methane whenever these storms is coming, and it may just take the tarp off anyway.
I hope that is another way to get this done, Devon. But the thing is, when they put these facilities where they put them, they knew this was floodplain to begin with. But they did anyway.
Yeah.
And I again say that that's because they want the land. Because this land that we're talking about in southeast North Carolina is surrounded by water. Beachfront property.
You're implying what some I've heard conservative folks say. What's the problem with climate change? Because we'll just be in position to have new beachfront property.
Yeah.
It'll just be farther inland. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Absolutely. I've always believed that being outside and coming back inside. I've always thought that was the main object, is to get the land.
I'd like to open it up to any questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to, if you could clarify what permits you're talking about. You're talking about Clean Water Act permits for every 5 years, or these What?
Oh, no, the permit, you saying what permits are we
Yeah,
talking
what
about?
permits are you talking
The
about?
permit is, Smithfield is the owner of all these pigs that we talking about.
Right.
They contract out with what used to be family farmers. They contract out with them to grow the animals for them. And so they will take them a herd of babies, and then they have to raise them and grow them to market size. And so they call these contract growers. And so your question again?
So-
On the
The
permit.
permits
Oh
that
yeah,
you
and so the
issued,
permit
that you're
is
saying
the
there's,
state agency,
right,
the regulator, give these contract growers permission to raise these animals on that land that they're on by issuing them a permit that says you can do this as long as you follow these guidelines.
okay,
And so the problem is that the guidelines were never the right guidelines for what they're doing.
right.
And nobody never had the backbone to change it, but to let the industry run rampant, because that's what they want. And by the way, when the contract growing, when this industrial animal agriculture came to North Carolina, one of our state lawmakers, Wendell Murphy, used to be one of the largest hog owners, hog growers in the state, went into state legislature, became a state representative, and set up all the rules and regulations for how this industry could operate. And so they set all the laws in place. DQ Diener at that time, they had the will of the legislators, because if they try to disagree with them, the legislators can shut them down by passing laws. And so they really controlling everything. But Diener was also bed partners with the pork industry, so much so till you couldn't tell them apart. You literally could not tell who was the regulator, who was the industry. And so much so that the waste management officer for Diener, who's the one that handled these permits for these growers, went in court on one of these nuisance cases, testified on behalf of the industry. The regulator of the state going in testifying on behalf of the industry that's harming the people that they supposed to be protected, that the regulator's supposed to be protected. That's the partnership they had. Okay.
And they issue permits for these lagoons and spray fields,
Yeah,
which
every
are
5 years.
football field size holes in the ground,
Yeah.
cesspools of hog manure and urine. And Division of Water Quality manages those permits, which are reissued every 5 years.
Mhm.
And is there any citizen suit provisions in the North Carolina state laws that you could challenge permits themselves?
So the idea was, for the Title VI, the idea was that office that issues the permits gets federal funds from EPA in order to run that permit program. And so that makes them subject to all Title VI provisions that they should be carrying out.
And Title VI is an act under the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that says government cannot do business in a way intentional or unintentional that have a disproportionate impact on low-income communities if they receive federal funding.
And Title VI protected groups of
Yeah,
race,
and
ethnicity.
DQ definitely receive federal funding.
So that's the
Well, just to point out, it was interesting in just learning and finding out about the county I'm in. There is no need for a permit for a CAFO because it is a
Right.
permitted use as a farm.
Same thing in
It's the Right to Farm Acts, and they
Yeah.
are not categorized as industrial
Yeah.
operations or industrial, they're considered farms. But this differs from state to state.
And the other nuance is that the Division of Water Quality in North Carolina regulates hog CAFOs, but
Yes.
not poultry
Yes,
CAFOs,
that's right.
because they're dry waste management systems, whereas hogs are wet liquid waste management systems.
But they got NPDES permits.
Yeah.
We're saying they're non-discharging permits.
Well, and the only way I could find out where they were in my county is DEQ would not give that information. I had to do an erosion and sediment control search and a FOIA to the local county government, said, you need to tell me what new permits, because they do need a permit for that, what new ESC permits and stormwater releases you've issued this year or just new proposed. So it's really tricky. You have to look, you really have to study all of these different levels. EPA signs off to the DEQ if the numbers of the CAFOs are under 100,000. 100,000 animals. EPA, I think that's accurate, doesn't get involved. So it's really, it's meant to be difficult the way it is. It's meant to be a network which you can't penetrate.
That's right, that's right.
Another example that in North Carolina, poultry farms are regulated under the Division of Agronomic and Consumer Services. And the locations and the information about how many, and over the years, how many have grown, guess where that's held under? The biosecurity and biohazard
It's the same
area.
in our state, you can't find them,
So-
they're not mapped, no one knows where they are.
It's really
And
challenging.
And y'all the one violating biosecurity with all this crap out here.
Exactly.
There's a question back here.
So to kind of touch off what Ms. Elsie just said at the end about hitting them with a pocketbook, and there's different ways to do that. I'm just wondering, I know there are organizations that bring up social and environmental justice issues, especially in North Carolina. And one way to hurt them in the pocket is not to purchase their product. And so I'm part of the board of the Black Vegetarian Society of Maryland, and I work with other organizations as well. And part of our message is in telling people, like, if you're putting your money in certain things, then you're contributing to the cause.
Right,
And
exactly.
so when I talk to young people, I bring up those issues. And because when I talk to certain people different ways. And so when I bring up, a lot of our family members are from North Carolina, South Carolina, and how this impacts our people, then it affects them differently mentally, and they start thinking about things differently, and so they don't want to put their money into those organizations and support harming other people. For some people it's about the animals, for some it's about the people. My thing is, are you all addressing, like, not putting your money into those organizations? Because, like, you're looking at the dairy industry right now, they're suffering. They're suffering because people are not purchasing their products. And so, are you all working with organizations that can help you all get the message out to the community? Like, hey, there are other alternatives. You don't have to purchase because you're hurting yourself, you're hurting your family, and it goes on and on. So I'm just wondering if there's any other avenues you are looking at to economically harm these
But
companies.
there are some campaigns that are going on, and I know some people, particularly in Wilmington, CAFOs must have to go. And these are mostly vegan people, and they are educated people about you're getting this pork for free, but look at the price that is placing on people like myself and Devon who lives in these impacted communities. So how can we affect change that way? We cannot buy the meat. And then we also tell them when we're going out into the communities that we'll know what you're eating, because we know, especially with the pork, it takes longer for the body to digest pork than beef. And pigs don't sweat. So that means when they're ingesting being shot up with these antibiotics and growth hormones, some of that is remaining in their body. But does it come out in the excrement? It remains in the meat, and that's what we are consuming. And that could very well be the reason that you have so much sickness and ailments, cancers, asthma, and all these other kind of diseases in these impacted communities. It's because of the food that we eat. When you breathe the air, you're breathing in all those gases and chemicals. If you drink the water, you're drinking it. So it's just a nasty, dirty industry that needs to be cleaned up. And the industry got the money to do it, and they refuse. And if they don't have the money, WH Group, they're the owners now, Chinese company, they've got the money. Why won't they invest the money? And then they spent millions of dollars to identify systems that would do away with the spray fill and lagoon system. The industry invested this money. 5 superior technologies were identified, but they said it was too costly. the man that helped identify these systems said that it's not too costly. So why won't the industry implement them? They won't do it until they get all the land they want.
Devon, did you have something?
Yeah,
I'm sure of that.
that when you begin to talk about those type campaigns, the one thing that comes to mind is, yes, there has been those type of campaigns, but remember that in rural communities and rural counties, it's a whole lot harder because you got people, versus, in your urban areas. And at the same time, remember in these rural areas or rural counties, towns, you're talking about the limited amount of resources, limited amount of stores where you could get, organic raised meats and so forth. So it's a challenge within itself. Not to say that it can't be done, but at the same time, when you begin to talk to small nonprofits like ours, that also have a lack of resource funding to get people to put boots on the ground. So that's why, yes, public education is important. It takes time. And and partnering with other groups, is a help. And the other thing that we found that in some of the work that we've been involved in, there's people in other parts of the country that know more about what we've done than people that live right in our own communities. And you begin to talk about the broadband, things of that nature, and the internet, Twitter, you name it, getting that message out there. So that's another issue within itself in rural communities.
Yeah.
So just to piggyback off of what you all just said, so actually I think you could use that to your advantage, that other communities know about what's going on more than some other community. Because if you slapped on a sticker on some of these hog farm products that said, or the hog farms that don't use spray fields and lagoons, we could put an environmentally friendly sticker on those hog farm products, and the people that do have the resources to pay for that environmentally friendly product will probably buy that product over a product that maybe was exported from North Carolina. So I think even if people that don't have the resources probably are going to pay for those products that are cheaper, the ones that do have access to those resources, when they see that sticker, they're probably going to buy that because they think it's environmentally friendly. And if you raise awareness about it nationally, then people will know, I just bought this product that I know is not harmful, harming people in North Carolina. Also, I had another question for Dr. Heaney. I was wondering, because I read one of your papers about pig tobacco, and you said use the word zoonotic pathogens, so those could be infectious in humans, right?
Not pig tobacco.
Okay,
But,
I was gonna say, so there's no opportunity for it to be infectious.
Not that particular one.
Okay.
Its real power is when Elsie, Naeema, and Devon first talked to researchers like Steve Wing, and the discussion was, what is the core problem? It was, as Elsie said, a neighbor who raises thousands of hog deliberately sprays the hog manure on me and my family. And the whole arc of all the science to do the air and the hydrogen sulfide in the air and to get odor has now landed back with pig tobacco to be able to say, you were right in the very beginning. It's not about a pathogen, or it's, from my best of my understanding, with the jury members being from Raleigh or Cary or not living in these areas, it's almost like the ick factor that gets at the indignity of what it would be like to live with pig fecal filth inundating the outside of your home, your property, and the inside of your home, onto your favorite easy chair where you like to rest and relax at the end of the day.
So that kind of piggybacks what I was saying about the sticker thing too, because if we buy eggs that say these were, made in a cage-free environment, or these were chickens that were raised in a cage-free environment, it's the same thing as an inhumane thing like spraying waste on people in North Carolina. So I feel like it should be treated the same way. So definitely, it's enough. It doesn't have to be infectious.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's enough.
Can we make a comment about that? You have to really, really study those words because the industry uses them. Cage-free simply means that 45,000 birds are shoved into a 60 by 900 foot house without cages. They used to be put
Yeah.
in the cages. There's still CAFOs. I found out Bell & Evans that I was buying Whole Food thinking I'm all little Miss Organic here, are raised in CAFOs.
Yeah.
They're just organic chickens. The
That's
chickens are horribly, the ones that go, I call them creatures, that go to the regular Tyson's because all those guys are genetically engineered, they're horrible. So what you have to actually put on there, I think the only thing that's accurate would be pasture raised, period. Anything else, and try to get the FDA and the USDA to put that on package. It's going, it's gonna be a big long fight. I think it can happen, but don't be naive that just a little sticker would do it. You have got to go through a huge process for that.
I think a bigger conversation too, nationally, about reducing meat consumption in general.
Me
would be
too.
where we talk about.
Yeah.
Well, Tyson's apparently is selling, the reason that we're getting this CAFOs closer to us, Tyson sold their packaging plant to a company named George's. George's was forced to fight a unfair trade practice suit by expanding that plant. Believe it or not, the federal government said you have to expand the plant and put in better, more efficient machinery. So now they have to fuel more animals in there. Oh wait, I lost my voter. What does it say about it? So wait, what were we just
You
talking
said the
about?
unfair trade, thing.
Right, but before that, you and I were just chatting about it. The reason they're doing that, excuse me, is because they're supposedly limiting their chicken protein facilities and going into texturized laboratory meat protein. And they have said we are in the protein business, we are not in the chicken business. So things seem to be changing a little bit, but that's interesting to say that, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'll just close by saying that it's been pretty remarkable to watch the nuisance cases, the decision to go that route and to wonder if it was going to be successful, and to see all the science that the panelists have been involved with Dr. Wing and others. And to realize the way that nuisance cases are started is there's sort of a jockeying to who gets to argue their best case first between the plaintiffs and the defense. But if the plaintiffs go first and they pick their best, slam dunk case, then the defense goes. And so with 5 cases with that structure, we know with the victories, the defense even picking what they think is their slam dunk case, they've lost.
They've lost.
In each of so they've had several slam dunk cases that they've been able to put forward. So that makes me think that there is power in community working with scientists to coalesce around an issue like this. North Carolina's regulatory environment with the supermajority in the House and the Senate is what it is, and it's unfortunately not the best, sunniest message to take home. But I really think that there is power in some of these legal strategies in terms of thinking about the track record so far as a strategy in other states, where maybe it's not the same regulatory structure. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.